from your friendly people here at the WatchTower podcast. We'd just like to tell everybody currently, especially in El Paso, if you're listening in or if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, stay safe. They have just announced today, as of October 25th, that we're currently on a 2-week curfew, and they're asking people to just stay home at the very least for the next 2 weeks. Please, guys, stay safe. Hospitals are capacity. This is a serious thing. Wear your masks if you got to go out. Your Tower family, care for you guys. So just stay safe and protect your loved ones around you, man. That's what it's all about. So we just want to put that out there.
Yeah, just please don't take it as a joke. If not for yourself, for others. Just please be safe and wear a mask. Don't be that asshole.
Yeah. Cool.
Right.
And back
Grab
to the show.
And just wait till all this blows over.
And welcome back to the WatchTower podcast, the new podcast brought to you by the new Tower Cast Network, Tower Cast Podcast Network from Tower Productions. This is pretty much your book club for films. That's the way I like to think of it, right? So
it's like a book club, but fun.
No girls.
Unless you're like me that actually like to watch films at home with subtitles, in which case you are still reading. But yeah, I'm the weird guy who likes the subtitles. So
I think
You're the nerd.
Yeah, I think we all
See a
do.
movie like this.
Cool. So mermaids.
So mermaid. So today we
That's
are
what I'd
talking
like the tagline to be for this episode. So
mermaids.
Mermaids.
Mermaid. Are you attracted to them?
No,
What to do
before
when
we
you
get
find
into this very special episode, I'd like to introduce my co-host, John Eric Castro.
Yay, my beauty.
My other co-host, Christian Yokomoto Medina.
Why, hello, fellows and fillettes.
And we have our trusty producer, Austin Young, making sure we're sounding good in the background there.
One or two.
Yo.
One.
And last but not least, we have the director of the show, director of the podcast, not only this podcast, but our Towercast podcast as well, Mr. Michael Vilao.
Ahoy, me
man.
hearties. There we go.
Ahoy.
So for the
Ahoy,
best for
ahoy,
last.
ahoy.
I have to disagree with your mug. This is not a happy place.
You know, like I can't change what it says. Okay, this is my happy place.
Especially this episode and this film. It's not a
I know.
happy place.
For those of you who heard the lovely intro that we're going to be adding on to the next few episodes, yeah, what an ironic mug to bring out. Like, this is my happy place, and then hospitals are at capacity. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
this is not
no
a joke,
kidding.
but
Take it seriously. Today we're going to be talking about
my pick.
a very happy film brought to you by Disney, and this is.
Oh, wait, you saw that movie?
Yeah, I saw that.
That's a wholly different one.
Weren't we watching The Little Mermaid? Isn't that what
We
The wrong
I just
mermaid
watched Donald Duck get like beaten right now. So if you're talking about that film, then yeah, we watched.
So the Green Goblin got what he deserved. Anyways, we're
With
talking
Batman.
about the Laos pick, actually, the Laos pick. Robert Eager's 2019 psychological horror film, The Lighthouse, starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. Brought to you by the great minds at A24. A24 is doing crazy things, man. Not only for horror films, especially for horror films, but I think they're doing some great stuff all over, man.
They're bringing in a whole new like horror renaissance.
Yeah.
In the art scene.
And I think I think we talked about that last episode, if I'm not mistaken, that A24, the work that A24 and Blumhouse is just they're doing some crazy stuff right now. I mean A24, if you're an indie film guy, you knew of A24 way back when as just the indie guys that were doing obscure B horror films. I mean,
That
all
all
the way
changed.
out to 2014, but I mean, I kind of feel like it started changing with like.
With The Witch, actually, like around
The Witch,
like those
yeah.
series of movies.
No, there was a film that came out before that it's still on my bucket list. It's called The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Yeah, Killing of
Oh,
Sacred.
with Colin Farrell?
Yeah.
I mean, they did some crazy things. Like they even did Kevin Smith's Tusk, which, like I said, just obscure B horror, crazy, wacky stuff. They did Tusk, and they also did Ex Machina, which obviously got a big reception.
Yes.
So they've been doing some stuff since like 2013, 2014. But yeah, you're right. The Witch was definitely one of the ones to mention. Room was a notable mention too with Brie Larson. She played like a kidnapping victim. That was a pretty good film, and I think she got nominated for an Oscar for that film. However, they did something really good with. By the way, speaking of Colin Farrell, I tried to give The Lobster a shot. I need to give it another shot. I couldn't get past the first act. I don't know, man.
Me too.
It's a good concept, but I couldn't get past the first act.
What was the concept? Where he's trying to find a date, right?
No, well, essentially the concept is that there's this center where if you don't find quote unquote the love of your life, if you don't find somebody that you connect with within a certain amount of time, they turn you into an animal of your choice.
Get the fuck out of here.
And it's called the lobster because his animal of his choice was I want to get turned into a lobster. So
it's because it has the sexual maturity like for a long ass time.
Yeah. So it's like people who don't find their loved ones, they go to the center and basically that. But it's like a mandated law. Like if you don't find somebody past like 30 or 35 or something like that, they put you into the center. It's a crazy thing. It's a weird thing. But anyways, the minds at A24 brought us The Lighthouse. You know what? If you're like me and you start paying attention to Oscar buzz early, you start hearing the name of this film in 2019. And early 2019, that's what was happening. You started getting a lot of buzz, for both actors, both Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. And you even started getting some buzz for Robert Eggers. And then nothing happened.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't this like also getting like some type of Oscar buzz? Or am I thinking of a different film?
That's what I just said.
It was getting best cinematography buzz.
Yeah,
that and actors, but sadly, it didn't. Not even Willem Dafoe got nominated.
No, I got cinematography a nomination, and that's it. But I mean, obviously, with Independent Spirit Awards and British Academy Film Awards, it got other stuff. But it went to Cannes, and it won the Director's Fortnight Prize at Cannes, which is a big deal. It's the director award basically at Cannes. So I think I think Oscar from Movies Mayhem himself, fellow friend of the WatchTower podcast, he's going to be listening in.
Shout out.
He was a big shout out to Oscar and all the guys at Movies Mayhem. So he was a big advocate for this movie early on, and I remember he was pissed when the actors didn't get nominations. He was pissed. Like, I mean, he was like on Facebook ranting about it.
Deservedly so. Like this movie transcends like all type of acting, especially for last year. It was
definitely
on both with both of them.
Yeah,
I think Willem Dafoe takes it, man. Towards the end, that freaking laugh. That
here's the thing, though. Pattinson's like in the first act was, in my opinion, very very bland, very weak.
But there's a reason.
And then the second act. Towards the end of the second act, he starts picking up the acting, the performance.
Yeah,
and I get that it's the trajectory of the character going mad, and I get that, but at the same time, I just feel like performance-wise, when you see like film like when you see like Good Times and you see Robert Pattinson in that, and it's wired the entire film, and he's wired the entire film. I guess I was just expecting like right away, right? But obviously, then again, it's a different animal.
Yeah, at the beginning, he was basically kind of like. Just wanted to shut up. He just wanted to keep it to himself.
That's true.
It was subtlety.
Yeah. Especially when you, after seeing the film and then knowing, I guess kind of like a little bit of his backstory or what he kind of like gives you that insight, and then rewatching it, you see a lot of that kind of internal battle going on, where then it doesn't seem like he's just kind of going and being there and being all energetic to work there because he's coming with all that baggage,
Well, I gotta ask. Oh, my bad.
No, I was just saying that's true. It's something that makes you think because clearly he's hiding something. Yeah. But he's trying not to be too obvious about it. And I think that's pretty interesting. What were you going to say, Castro?
No, fuck. I forgot. My bad.
Only on the WatchTower podcast.
Only on the WatchTower podcast. Now, you know what? Okay, I want to get into this film. I think there's a lot to dig into.
Gotta go first impressions.
On every front. This was my first time watching this film. So
like 2 hours ago.
Literally. First impression. You know what? It's weird. I didn't want to watch it at night because I know Robert Eggers.
Best time.
Fuck no, I'm not gonna watch it at night.
It was a trip watching it like for the first time at night. I remember, like I'll let you go on your first experience, then I'll kind of reel it back into mine.
Yeah.
I mean, my first impression was a couple things right off the bat on the directing front. I thought it was an interesting choice to have the 4:3 aspect ratio that it did. I thought that was right off the bat an interesting choice.
Yeah,
and a very I wouldn't say it put me off. It makes me wonder whenever somebody does that, it has to be for a very very specific reason.
And just a quick note on that, it's a 1.19 by 1 ratio, and it was meant to mimic the 1890s like film like I guess kind of aspect ratio. So definitely
I did think that.
It definitely was trying to just kind of shove it in your head as far as like it feeling very classic, it feeling very vintage.
Yeah, I'm gonna go even a step further. If you know me, you on the directing front, Austin knows this more than anybody. I like to shoot and in post work on the 2:3:5:1 aspect ratio. I like widescreen. I like to shoot wide, and it's within for me. It's just a more cinematic feel. That 1:19:1 aspect ratio. I'll take it a step further. I think Eggers took an active choice as a director to think, I want it to feel smaller and claustrophobic.
The strain. Yes.
You know?
It's in the actual script. This has to, if you look in the script, it says it has to be filmed on 35 millimeter with a 1.19 by 1 aspect ratio. It's very deliberate, very conscious.
I will say this. I feel like if he was going to take that approach, and he did a very good job. I'm not going to say he didn't. I feel like I missed some film grain. If he shot on celluloid, I would have wanted to see more film grain. I feel like that would have added to what he was going for.
I did research. So
perfect. Yeah, I mean, you're going to fill us in on the cinematography front. But as a director, I'm just thinking, man, I feel like I would have wanted, if I'm going that route, I'm not going to go halfway. I'm going to go, full throttle into that aspect. But I'm sure there's a reason. However, my first impression, obviously, that's the first thing I noticed. You know what I love about this film is two things. Number one, it didn't try to be something else. The marketing was it was on spot on.
It was on point. Yeah.
Yeah, the marketing was spot on. It was exactly what the poster, what the trailers, the teasers are trying to portray. Which I think I love it when a film can do that, because most people are trying to be clever nowadays, and they're trying to show you something on the trailer, and then there's some big twist in the film that change it, and it's not trying to do that. I thought that was interesting about. So the marketing was spot on. And the other thing that I really loved about the film was, among a lot of other things, was the fact that it's when you read books, when you read Moby Dick, when you read old tales, on the fisherman tales, exactly. This is exactly what you picture in your head, and I thought that was perfect. I thought the fisherman tale is finally depicted in a way that is real. Number one, it's not meant for children. Number two, and it's I hadn't seen something like this. I think the style is very much in the art house picture style, and I know it was going for that, and not experimental. There's a difference between experimental and art house, and it was definitely art house, and this definitely was an art house picture in running through its veins, the art house formula, which I think was very interesting. So yeah, my first impressions were that all the quote unquote what the fuck moments that people I had heard about weren't as dramatic for me. So I thought that was like, all right, people are just full of shit, because I thought it was great, and I didn't. All these wow factor moments were like, oh no, that's great, that's good film, that's good storytelling. It's good storytelling. So those were my first impressions. What did you guys think?
And I know Castro, this is also your first time watching it, right?
Oh yeah.
What'd you think?
Well, the first thing that stood out was the sea sailor's dialect, dude. It puts you in the set, dude, like the 1800s.
And you can't escape it, right? Just Willem Dafoe's like
Yeah, you can barely understand him, but it's beautiful how he uses the ers and the eyes at the end of the sentence. It's just kind of like old school.
And the contrast between Dafoe's character and Pattinson's character. Dafoe's character was truly using that, as
that's why he was taking the cake for performance at first.
And Pattinson's character was, I mean, he's not a seaman. He wasn't, so
the logger.
Yeah.
Okay, no, never mind.
Go ahead. What?
Do you find the connection in the log? You know how his old boss died when he was like logging or something? Mm-hmm. And then he finds out that this guy is putting like criticisms on his log.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know.
I haven't pulled out, but it could be.
Captain's Log 2013. No, I mean, I think that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
No, yeah, man. I was looking for like little clues like that, but
I think the bigger contrast was land and sea, right? He was a man of land and the forest and the trees, and now it's completely flipped on him for his own doing. But anyways,
no, yeah, and I just love the whole slowly build up of them going insane, and then you start to interpret it like in your own perspective of was it an endless cycle of what's going on? Like obviously you get like it's the same guy, right?
You know what I try to do, and Sandra, my wife, she hates that I do this. She hates that I'm starting a film. And as a filmmaker and as a film lover, you already know all of the formulas, right? You know all the formulas that people are trying to be clever with. So my brain automatically went to, and my immediate thought was, is he the younger version of Dafoe?
Yeah,
interesting.
And stuff like that, like moments like that where I was like, okay, what are they going to do? What are they going to try and do? How are they going to try to impress me? And it did its own thing, which I thought was fantastic.
I kind of messed up because I saw their names and they were both Thomas, so I kind of was already like, yeah.
Okay.
And in the script, they're basically referred to more as young man and old man.
Oh, young and old.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought
that's why like. Until maybe a little before halfway through the film, do you actually learn like, oh, his name's this and his name's that? Because for the most part,
he still lies a little bit and then comes out at the end.
I just did a quick Google search, and the meaning of the name Thomas is twin and leader. So that's pretty.
I love that type of writing.
That's pretty interesting. I haven't
thought of that.
I mean, just their names alone has a lot of meaning. A like-looking man.
Tomas,
twin or leader. So in a way, Dafoe, there's even a line in the film where where Pattinson says, "You're not the president, you're not my father." And I think that's what you're trying to be. And I think that's interesting in terms of being a leader, being his boss, being
treating him like a dog.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry, Castro, I interrupted your thought, but what else did you think about the film?
No, I mean, I kind of like that. I mean, I'm not going to spoil it, right? But I kind of like how he doesn't show you what he sees, which is kind of beautiful because you kind of his insanity got him to that place.
Yeah.
Who cares what he sees?
I mean, that's the quote unquote. I feel like that's the quote unquote Jaws moment of this film.
Right.
Is you don't see much of the shark until you see the shark, right? But and I think that's the number one implementation that Alfred Hitchcock did for all of us.
That is also the Lovecraftian themes of the movie of Lovecraft, which basically the thing about Lovecraft, in case of somebody doesn't know, his stories are basically about cosmic horror, which is the fear of the unknown, the fear of that cannot be explained because it's way too beyond the comprehension. So usually in his stories, his descriptions of the monsters that he sees aren't actually like descriptions. It's more about like what he feels like I can't just explain. So basically that moment that you say is basically that, like we don't see what he's seeing.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Get that because we just can't comprehend what the hell he's seeing.
Yeah.
But I think also it's a commentary on, or not a commentary, but it's a storytelling tactic that a lot of filmmakers do, and some people do it successfully and other people don't. And the successful part that Eggers did in this is you have to take a side, and you have to start realizing, who am I picking, who's going crazier, who's taking. You have to start taking that approach, and I think very few filmmakers successfully take that approach. In this particular case, you're wondering the whole time, well, who's fucking crazy? And then when Dafoe's character, we have the scene where he's like, yeah, that's why you just chased me with your axe and you destroyed the boat outside. And you're like, the fuck did I just watch? You question yourself. So I think that's an interesting perspective on that. But wow, I mean, okay, Delao, Yokomoto, you guys had seen this picture before. I'm sure you saw it early on when it came out, and Amazon had the exclusive rights to distribute this film very early on. So what do you guys think?
Well, I don't know if you want to go. Like, I have a little anecdote. Like, I keep missing the ball when it comes to sharing films with people and like trying to have good date nights. I guess I don't pick like the nice Disney film. I decided, you know what? Like, I was having like a little family movie night, and I remember thinking like, oh, I heard about the Lighthouse. It seems interesting.
Oh my God.
Let's see what happens. So, you know, come on, Mom, come on, Dad. Get my girlfriend, you know, get some popcorn, sit in. It's probably about, you know, fishes. It's like Finding Nemo, you know, they're just the Lighthouse. So
it's a nautical feel. It's just got a nautical feel. That's it.
God, I mean, seeing that, it was kind of like in for a penny, in for a pound. So when things started getting really weird, and I mean, mermaids are coming and not being mermaids or being different. You just kind of hypersexuality. But you start going with it, and I mean, my impressions was just how well paced of a film where it's kind of like a film that we'll probably talk about in The Tower Crown, but that they're able to show that kind of like path towards insanity, but it's not like these. You're not in an insane asylum. It's not on the nose. Right. I don't know if that makes sense. That you're kind of going through this journey, and you just think everything's going to kind of like subside, and things are going to get fine.
Not one flew over a cuckoo's nest, and you're not seeing them automatically kind of lose their shit.
Especially like all you're doing is you're getting these feelings of like, don't do this because there's the bad omens behind it, you know, like it's not good to kill a seabird.
I want to talk about that.
And after that happens, you're just kind of like there knowing that like he did something that it's already been discussed in this universe, kind of like that's bad, and now you're just kind of like what happens when you kill a seabird, you know? And that being kind of like what spirals things, and then you just feeling I think like you're seeing him out of control, which makes you feel like you're kind of out of control when it comes to like what's going to happen next in the film the first time around. And I think it was just so well crafted, so well put together, for kind of like you said, a Lovecraftian horror, or for a bit of an art house film. I think it just did itself so well. So
and what the family thought of it?
Oh no, they left as soon as they could. I'm currently living alone, looking for roommates. No, they like, it's funny because
Delal's like, I'm currently living in the Lighthouse.
Yeah. With like Ash, my girlfriend, I like told her that, you know, I was like, so what'd you think? And she was like, well, it was a film. I know that. And then I remember I was gonna watch it again because of the podcast, and I was like, hey, I got it. Are we gonna watch it again? And she's like, you go ahead.
But did you guys have a conversation of what you guys thought, or she just took it as the surface thing? You know,
I think she took it as, okay, here's the thing. I think and it's the pleasure that comes when you understand like art house, and when you are part of like the normal stream of like movies and television and film, is that when you watch an art house film, at least for me, I don't expect to understand everything, but I really appreciate the experience, and I appreciate trying to understand it and trying to go through that. And
you're a better man than me, Lilo. I want to interject in that point, because when it comes to art house pictures, that's primarily the point. Look, art is meant to be interpreted, not understood, right? Number one. So art house pictures, to me, they're not frustrating, but then I feel stupid because I'm not understanding. And that's part of the reason where I can understand and I can appreciate when something is left for interpretation, but when somebody who does art house pictures that are trying to be too deep, I'll give you an example. It's part of the reason why I don't like Pedro Almodovar. He's not a director on my top list.
Some of them,
to me, he's not my cup of tea. And part of the reason is because the films I have watched of his, and I've seen a few.
Have you seen The Skin I Live In?
Yes.
Talking about kind of horror?
Yeah. I haven't seen Pain and Gain, the new one. I haven't seen, or Pain and Glory, or Pain and Gain, right? I haven't seen it, but I just think Almodovar has that ability to go deeper into his own artistic interpretations. And for me, I want to leave an art house picture thinking and feeling like, well, I interpreted it this way. This is what I got out of it. Just much like any other film, right? That's how I want to interpret a film. So when it gets too deep, one of those examples, and I think you and I, Dalal, talked about this, was David Lynch's Eraserhead. At art house, but very experimental, and I walked out thinking, "What the fuck?" And it was just too much for me. But I know that it has a market. I know it has a fan base. I know there's individuals who really can appreciate that side of things, and I applaud you. I'm more of a classic Hollywood film nerd. So when it comes to the new era and French New Wave and on that people kind of started trying to do, it's very this picture did good for me. The Lighthouse was great, and it was a good example of an art house film that I can appreciate. Yeah. But in the art house world, I'm not your man.
It's like I think it was art house enough that for art house fans, you appreciate it, but not so much that I can't even say that. No, it broke a line, because I know that with my family and with Ash, that kind of like feeling at the end, like, well, now what am I supposed to do with this? What kind of happens afterwards? And for me, I appreciated that, because then it's that whole extra journey of like, well, what did it mean? What was going on here? Yeah. What did I want to take away from it? But it's definitely.
But I like that it's not so existential. A lot of these art house pictures are modernized now, and a lot of independent filmmakers are taking that approach of making an art house picture. I think this one had a story. Yeah, and I know that sounds so surfaced and so nonchalant and so whatever, but this art house picture had a story that I could appreciate, that I could, dissect.
Enough so that you could see what was happening next and understand it, but not, If
I heard that it wasn't just
random images, huh?
Or it's based on true events, no?
No,
it was
from what I understand,
several things.
Written.
There's these especially these two lighthouse stories that are kind of like at this point, kind of like folk tales.
Oh, and one of which is Edgar Allan Poe's, by the way. One of which is based on an Edgar Allan Poe.
Which one?
And another one.
Oh, my bad.
Also, part of it is based on the Flannan Lighthouse vanishings, which is about like these three people who vanished out of a lighthouse. Well, nobody knows what the hell happened.
Yeah, ultimately they're folk tales, though. I wouldn't say that they're based on true stories. Ultimately, they're folk.
Well, the Flannan one is actually like an unsolved crime type of thing.
Oh, okay.
I can see this happening for sure, especially back then.
Yeah, mermaids, man.
In Scotland,
mermaids.
No, not that, but two people go insane in the night.
And then mermaids.
Especially in the 1800s.
I like that it didn't try to dive away from the you hear a lot of these moments of sailors and men, and especially in Nova Scotia. I mean, you hear a lot of these stereotypes to a certain degree of like, when men are at sea, they're desperate. They're gonna jerk off to anything. They're gonna be with other men. Yeah, and it's true, right? But I like that they didn't try to derive away from that. They embraced it and they used it. So I thought that was interesting that they're not gonna try to dive away from that. I will say this though, because of what I heard of people saying, I remember Oscar telling me about this film early on, and I remember he told me, "Hey, you want the perfect film for what we're currently feeling with this pandemic and this quarantine, you got to watch The Lighthouse." So I thought it was going to be much more, they're going to be stuck in the lighthouse for a few weeks, but I mean, it surprised me that they weren't. It surprised me that they were just going out and about on their duties. I guess my interpretation of that was like, oh, I'm going to go into this film and they're going to be stuck because they can't go out because of the storm. Two sailormen, crashed on land, but it's not. It was two men who were working, two working men who were going about their duties in and out. Yeah, two wikis going in and out of the lighthouse and the surrounding areas to just fulfill their jobs. I mean,
thanks to the storm and the bad luck, quotation marks, bad luck of killing a seabird. The rescue team, the team wasn't able to get there and actually get them offshore.
Yeah. Or that's why they weren't really coming at all. I mean, I interpreted it that way too. Like, given Dafoe's character, he was lonely, dude. He just wanted somebody.
Do you think he was getting them drunk, or just because he couldn't drink water? Because the water would just come out.
I think it's I think it's both.
What do you think of that shot where after he kills the seagull, it like cranes up and you see the winds go from like northeast to like southwest or something like that? Like they just like shift, and it's. I mean, it was really, I guess, awkwardly satisfying that just seeing the winds kind of change and getting that feeling.
Turn.
Yeah, I don't know, just pleasant.
And actually, Eggers has confirmed that that was a deliberate thing that he wanted to put on the nose because
the winds are changing. I mean,
he says because of the fact that this was such a surreal thing, and he wanted the audience to kind of get in that mindset that of the film of what he was trying to say, and basically the moment that he kills the bad omen, was explicitly told, "Do not do this." Everything goes to hell because that's when that's when the storm picks up. That's when he doesn't get the team doesn't come to pick him up and all that stuff, right?
Do they explain
get drunk for the first time?
Yeah.
What's up?
Do they explain why it's bad luck?
I think it's one of those fisherman things, right?
Apparently it's an actual folk tale that some believe that seagulls hold the soul of dead fishermen, and then but that's an actual folklore and tale and all that. That's why they tell you not to kill a seabird. That's why
I like that they went into that. I like that if you're gonna make a world of a world I'm not used to. Do your research and do it the right way. And I think that was fantastic. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Dan Harmon story circle. Dan Harmon's the creator of Rick and Morty, among other things like Community and a bunch of stuff. But if you're a writer, it's a really good thing to study, especially if you're doing episodic stuff. But even if you're not, it's basically a reformation of the hero's journey. And if you know anything about writing and writing scripts, the hero's journey is basically your Bible and your formula that you want to try and implement all these points. Hit all these points. I very early on didn't follow the hero's journey. I kind of wanted to break the rules that way. I felt like, I don't want to follow a formula. But ultimately, even if you don't follow the formula, you're following the formula. There's a beginning, middle, and end. The hero has to be uncomfortable and then get comfortable. I mean, there's a whole lot of things, right? So
you sound like Via, dude. You sound a lot like Via.
No, it's just there's a lot of formulas to go about when you're writing, right? And the Dan Harmon story, it has a list of steps, right? 11 steps, basically. Well, 8. He calls it the Dan Harmon 8. I like that there's a step there called crossing the threshold, or pay a heavy price for it. In other words, these 2 steps in writing. And I like that when he crosses the threshold of killing the bird, that's really what's going to set you off and kick you off. And Austin is celebrating a score of his team. I just thought it was interesting. If you study writing, if you study the story circle, it's pretty interesting that you have a very clear indication of when, quote unquote, the winds are changing for the character, for the hero. So I just wanted to bring that up. I thought of that right away. Like, oh, this is the moment that this is where things are going to change. I know things are changing. You don't have to tell me. You have to show me.
Well, following that, when do you think finally goes mad? I think there's a certain point.
I think it's that day, because that day is the first time he actually gets drunk with them.
Well,
and that's when they, you could say that's when they start losing time.
I'll say it's the midway point. It actually, going back to what you were saying about the structure and that being successfully implemented, at the exact midway point when they're at this point where you feel like, okay, you going, that should be the solution, that you finally go home after this hard journey and all that, and then the boat doesn't come for them. Yeah, and that's the.
It's hard. It's hard, by the way, as a writer. It's hard. It's so hard to write a story where the first, quote unquote, the first half of the film, you're trying to introduce the world and you're trying to introduce the characters in a sufficient way. And then the second half of the film, I'm not a horror writer by any means, by the way, but the second half of the film, you're everything goes to shit. And you think of great horror films, especially modern films, like things like Get Out, that won an Academy Award for screenplay writing and stuff like that. So when you think of stories like that and horror stories, it's I'm just going to say it. Horror directors, you have it easier than most other writers because you can set up the world. You can set up the world. I think so, because you can set up the world in a very. You could be even cheesy about it, because
I want to say it's forgiving for being on the nose. I think if you have like a romantic movie, like, let's say you have like a drama with more characters getting an interpersonal conflict and all that. If you're too on the nose about like, well, did you hear that this person doesn't talk out to this person because this happened? Like, you're like,
it's cheesy.
It's cheesy.
It's cheesy. It's on the nose. It's cliche. It's the.
But if you hear like, oh, did you hear that there's the boogeyman? Well, then it's cool. You know,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. I feel like horror writers have it a little easier than if you're writing another genre, but. In the Lighthouse
definitely respected, you know, that structure. Going back to like the midpoint, at the exact middle of the film, feeling that shift, I think that's when you start saying he's going mad, because at that point it's this unknown, and like you were talking about what's his name? Well, cosmic horror and all that. Yeah. The fact that the boat didn't come, and Lovecraft, that the boat didn't come. There's no real telling when the boat's coming, and all you can do is your job till it comes. Right. And then at that point, I think everything starts going downhill for him, and then that's when you're just in his mind. You know,
if you're kind of numerical with it too, Dafoe's character says, "How long have we been here? 5 weeks." And if you're numerical with it, you have 5, right? And you have 2 to begin, 2 to end, and you have a middle one. And I think that in connections to your midpoint. Chronologically, I think that's the week where, you know, we have 2 weeks that we're just setting up the world and we're just setting up the characters and we're just seeing them on their day to day. And then we have the 1 week where he gets drunk, where the boat's not coming, where they have to dig out their quote unquote the rations. And then the last 2 weeks.
Wait, so are you? You know, wait, was that the weeks that he was supposed to work, and then at the end of the 5th week the boat would come, or is that 5 weeks?
No, I think it was after? 5 weeks that they had been there. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Well, actually, here's the thing. On that scene, because it's the first time that they get drunk, and that's when supposedly in the next morning, that's when the boat was going to come in and save them. So they get blackout drunk and all that stuff. Yeah. He kind of does his chores in the morning, all hangover, but the boat never comes. So, but immediately the foe starts saying that, "Where's the provisions? Where's the provisions? Yeah. We need to ration out." Yeah, so you see that Robert Pattinson, he's just like,
and it's so what do you counterintuitive. It's so counterintuitive because he's the word ration. You know, there's no indication of rationing what they were the alcohol. They weren't rationing it out at all. They were divulging. Dig up a hole, no. You know. So I thought that was interesting.
So the thing is that they do that, and right after that's when Dafoe says, "Okay, you know what? Help me to recollect. Have we been here for 5 weeks? Have we been here for 2 days? Is this all have been 1 day?" Because apparently he has been saying for weeks that they need to be rationing it out, and that Pattinson has been saying it every day that, hey, the boat did not come today. And so it's when it starts playing around with.
But it makes you think. I think more than the question that everybody's asking themselves, and more than the question that Castro you were asking, was who went more insane and why. The question I was asking myself was, yes, were they going insane? But more than anything, what the foe? How does loneliness come into the equation for all of this? For both characters, because for Dafoe's character, loneliness played a huge toll on his mental state.
Well, he's been there for 13 weeks, for 13 Christmases, whatever.
13 Christmases, left his wife, left his kids. Exactly. So I thought that was interesting, is loneliness. I wanted to explore that theme more with these characters. And Robert Pattinson's character is running, number one. So he's by himself. He's on his own. He's not experiencing human contact because he's risking it all if he does, right? So upon talking to another character, he's trying to get along with them at first. He's just trying to be cool. Hey, I don't want any trouble. You know, this is what the manual says. I'm following my job. And then ultimately, when they get drunk together, they have more of a formative relationship.
But why does he say, "Don't spill your beans on me"?
Because
he knows that
he didn't want to be. Yeah, well, he didn't want to be that person. If he knew,
what doesn't give a fuck about people.
Take it this way. The only time that he could enjoy his company and they could relax together is when really they knew nothing about each other, when they were just getting drunk and joking around and all that kind of stuff.
I think it's like when you explore relationships, it's that. Yeah. It's when you explore relationships and the relationship if you spill, quote unquote, you spill your beans with somebody, that's when the relationship becomes serious.
Yeah, but that's when then, hey, I want you to have no secrets with me and stuff like that.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. That's where the relationship becomes serious. So Dafoe just wanted a one night stand, man. He just wants to do his job. He just wants un chalán que la ayude. He just wants the chap to help him out. And that's it. No muss, no fuss. I don't want to have a relationship with you, type of deal.
Okay.
I was hearing. I'm sorry, but I was hearing a theory or people who were breaking down the film and really trying to decipher meaning out of all this, and the way you kind of like characterize it as loneliness and how these people are battling with loneliness. And what's interesting is some people say that this kind of looks at that odd mixture that happens between the line between physical violence and sexual pleasure, and how even psychologically I've heard that it stimulates the same part of the brain when either of those situations occur, that you're either about to become like physically aggressive or sexually active and all that. And it shows how in this situation where they're just confined together and they're experiencing all these different emotions and it can't go out anywhere cathartically, they're constantly just melded together. They're always like at each other's throats and about to kiss each other, which is really weird. And it's how they're battling with that whole situation, and maybe even how when you're isolated by yourself, those lines become blurred, and all the emotions that you would have over time kind of become blurred because they can't go anywhere.
Even just gender roles, like even gender roles plays it into the equation, right? The manliness, the tough guy, the tough fisherman, and even then, I think part of your question, Castro, was can be answered through that, because when you hear the cliche, or you hear the tough fisherman. The Irish, when you talk about the Irish they keep everything in.
Yeah,
they keep everything in. They don't tell their feelings. They don't tell their, that's kind of right. So I think that in terms of gender roles, I kept thinking to myself, I know these guys, because I guess I had heard it at some point. I kept thinking, I know these guys are going to make out at some point.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's bound to happen.
It's going to happen, right? So when I started thinking that, you start thinking like, well, Dafoe is obviously the tougher exterior, the manly man. And Pattinson's kind of more of the, he's more sensitive to things. He's the newbie. He's
got the eyes of a girl.
Got the feminine. So you start thinking about stuff like that. And I thought it was a very interesting pivotal moment where when they're about to kiss, he pushes him and he does this. And he puts his fist up and he does the fighting thing.
They start fighting.
Almost like, hey, no, we're gonna, we're men.
That's a good one. Because it's obviously, it's like too obvious.
Right. We're men, we got to fight, and they do fight ultimately. So I think that's just a pivotal, important change in terms of like, almost like it could have turned into Brokeback Mountain, but that was the moment that didn't cause for that. That was the moment that brought them back to their reality. So I thought it was interesting. That particular moment caught my attention for that.
Although Pattinson later on still believes that he is kind of like leading him on, especially with them. With a wooden hiding this wooden figure, trying to get him out and everything.
That's just him going crazy, though.
That line of thought, especially at the end, was so.
I think it also kind of goes back to like they both want that same thing, which is just human connection. And I mean, with William Dafoe's character being the Wicker, who he's constantly having to take care of the lighthouse, which means you're isolated or you're jumping from partner to partner. And Pattinson's character being this man on the run, they both want human connection. They're both in a situation where maybe they have an opportunity for that, and it's like at the end they want more than that, and that fight is kind of like, we want the same thing, but we can't have it, and I'm going to fight you for it. And it's this really interesting kind of.
There's another thing where Pattinson just wants to go up to the light. I don't understand why he just doesn't let him. I know there's why wouldn't he just let him?
Because it's the only consistent relationship he's had in the past 13 years. It's the only relationship.
Okay, with you saying that, then Dafoe's the crazy one.
Well, yes, but they're both crazy.
They're both.
They're both.
But that's what it is. I'm gonna get into some really like I don't know, some really crazy interpretations, but I think this is one thing that came to mind. Number one was the biggest one for me with the lighthouse. The relationship with the lighthouse was warmth. And when you're in the relationship with somebody else, or when I'll even throw it out there in the sexual aspect of things, warmth is what turns a guy on, right? Warmth, and the warmth of a woman, and that whole kind of side of things. And I think that's I don't know if you guys saw the wide shot when Pattinson's looking up and Dafoe standing in front of the lighthouse naked.
Yeah,
the first moment, right? And then he walks out and he puts his clothes on. It's a sexual thing. It's that's how I interpreted it, and I think that he has both a sexual and an intimate relationship with the lighthouse.
There's this one thing that got scrapped because if not, it would become NC-17 movie.
Oh, okay.
But there was this one thing that Edgar's wanted to put, where it was this shot when in the montage where Robert Pattinson is masturbating.
Okay.
And you kind of see where he kind of goes through, and there's like the scenes of him like with the mermaid and all that stuff at the same time. So there was a shot that he wanted to put where basically you actually see the erect penis, and it kind of like slowly
fades into the lighthouse,
into the shape of the lighthouse.
Yeah. Well, but I think
that will make it an NC-17 movie. And they said, no, we're not gonna.
That scene where the lighthouse is like horizontal and then it goes perpendicular. I think that did enough, because you're seeing him standing up, and it's.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying. It has a lot of, not surprisingly, Castro, by the way, and this is part of the thing. Like, correct me if I'm wrong here, Lalo and Yokomoto. You guys are going to know more about this than I do, but art house pictures tend to dive themselves into sexual connotations and sexual meaning. A lot of them do sexual identity and a lot of stuff. I remember, Castro, I think you and I saw a film in Avant Mir's class. About gay, there was like gay sex and gay freedom, and it was an interesting piece, but it was like the first time that it had ever experimented with that art house picture, and I forget the name of it. It's very very.
Was it about like?
I think in like 1960s, 1970s.
Was it like homosexuality in the Black community? That one? Because
I think there was a segment in the film about that. But it wasn't entirely about that, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, because there's an art house film that's dedicated to that. I forgot what the name of it is.
Yeah, but anyways, in terms of art house films, they tend. I'm not saying that's their gag. I'm not saying that's what they do. But they do tend to explore sexuality in very different ways. Yeah. And in this particular one, I really figured that that's what it was. He says it's mine, and everybody's initial thought is, oh, he's got a body hidden up there. He did kill his second, and he's hiding it up there. Or you go the other route of like, is there a fucking mermaid up there? He's got a mermaid up there. No, I'm serious. I mean, you go through these different things because.
Well, then also like the weird like squid. Well, that whole squid thing where at first you're like, oh great, like he's jerking off on top of the tower, and then you see these like tentacles go up, and then I think he just wakes up the next day.
Then it's weird because you know how tentacles have that spermy thing, but that's also sperm. Yeah.
So I just thought of this. It just like because I was going through this that image on my mind. At the end when Pattinson, he starts killing him, right? Like he starts like choking him.
Yeah.
And you see Dafoe basically becoming this personification of Poseidon. Yeah, Poseidon especially with the tentacles and all that stuff coming around him and all that. So that if we go back to the scene of when Pattinson like looks up and he is you could kind of interpret that Dafoe is masturbating to the light.
Yeah.
Could that be that basically it means that Dafoe as Poseidon is fucking the light, and that's why the tentacles come out and all the goo starts coming out of nowhere.
Okay. Interesting.
At least the interpretation of it.
That's definitely an interpretation. That's definitely an interpretation, Yoko. And that's what I'm saying. Like with art house pictures specifically, you can interpret a ton of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And if you dive into these characters, So in my opinion, Castro, that's what it really was. It was she's mine. I'm surprised they didn't use that pronoun. You know,
no, there was a time that they did use feminine pronouns to describe the lighthouse, and I forgot what time it was. So there was definitely that quality of where they had that kind of connection with the lighthouse and the light, and even
I do think it has to do with warmth. I'm gonna like if you get into weird comedies. Stuff, look, I'm just gonna put it to you this way. Think about American Pie. The reason,
dude.
No. I'm sorry. Yeah, the pie. What's the whole thing with the pie? Somebody has a story. Somebody tells them, "Oh yeah, I fucked the pie and it felt nice because it was all nice and warm. It was nice and warm, right?
Like warm apple pie.
Warm apple pie, like warm apple pie. I mean, that's really the interpretation when it comes to warmth and having to do it yourself and not having a woman. And that whole thing is like, well, the warmth of the lighthouse. That's the ultimate, you know. Sexual pleasure that I can get through that. Yeah.
Also, you can kind of take it that he like Pattinson's character goes more mad when he can't convince himself anymore that I guess he can't masturbate to like distract himself from being covered in the sea and all that. Like when he starts going mad and then he goes out and he's masturbating, it's that whole flash of different images. But then after it's over, you see the storm raging on and dripping through the cracks and all that. And it's just like now he's covered by it. Like he's covered by the sea, he's covered by the water.
It's closing in on him.
He can't escape it. And even like it hints a little bit of that at first when water's just kind of dripping on his face and that's what wakes him up. And it's just...
I think what happened in terms of the going mad scenario that you guys are kind of exploring, I think that Pattinson went... I think they're both as mad. I think Pattinson went... mad in a faster pace than Dafoe's character. Maybe Dafoe experienced all of these emotions in the matter of these 13 years, but Pattinson experienced all of the emotions that Dafoe experienced in a matter of 5 weeks. And I say that because just think about scale. The mermaid figurine that he was masturbating to is the small thing that he eventually, like Delau says, it's not distracting him anymore. It's not enough because of this thing that's closing in on him. So eventually he fucking throws it and breaks it and stabs it and just doesn't care for it anymore. But the lighthouse is this big thing. It's the next level. It's a bigger scale, that is distracting and it's on top of the water. So if I'm up there, the storm can't get me, that type of mentality. I think I don't know. I would interpret that.
That makes more sense now, for sure.
By the way, did you know that when they built the lighthouse for the film, apparently they like undid, I don't know if it was like 1,000 watt RE light and then used that bulb with, I think, acrylic or plastic, or some kind of like hard plastic Fresnel lenses, which ended up costing like a couple of $100,000s to manufacture. But then they said that if they had made that same Fresnel lens out of glass to make the lighthouse, it would have cost millions or something like that. And it was so strong that it could be seen for like, I think like 80 miles away, like the actual lighthouse that they just built. So when they had the scenes with Dafoe and Pattinson going up there and looking at the lighthouse, they had to change out that bulb for a like 100-watt Fresnel.
I want to talk about that, Delau, because that's a good segue into like the technical aspects of the film, because they shot obviously the film was shot in black and white. This particular film stock, which is the XX522 film stock, it requires a shitload of light to shoot on this film stock.
Really?
Like a lot of light. So any nighttime scenes that you were basically seeing were
very
lit.
bright.
Yeah, that's
we're lit.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. I think you could talk about that a little more though, but I think that obviously 35 millimeter black and white XX522 film stock, but it was shot. What I thought was interesting was the film stock itself was shot on a modern Panasonic film camera. And that's why you have the contrast. And I think, again, you'll dive into it, but the film stock made it the look that it wanted to be, and you had to adjust to that film stock. But the cameras what made it look pristine and nice and clear and fine. So I don't know. I know you did your research, Delau, so I think you can.
I did a little bit, but so apparently that film stock, because they were definitely going for an older look, an older aesthetic, something that resembled films of like early cinema, 1890s. That kind of film stock before I think it's called like chromatic film was available, where it picked up more spectrums of light. That Kodak film stock basically it can pick up, I think, blues and greens, and it picks up UV light really well. So what happens is that so when people would dress in costumes or when they were playing with that, they would play in blues and greens because then they could make different shades of like gray and all that, but it didn't pick up red. And with red, what happens is that it would be like flesh tone and faces because we have like blood vessels and all that around there. Yeah. If you
paler.
Well, no, it gets more saturated because it can't like interpret it. So what happens is that it gets darker. So when they get more worked up, their faces are darker. You can see Pattinson's character when he gets blood on his face, it's just black. It's because the film stock itself doesn't pick up red, and then also because of the UV light, it doesn't pick up clouds. A lot of older photos, it's just this white washed out sky, and it's because it's very susceptible to like UV light. So he wanted to play with that kind of idea, play with the colors, play with the old-fashioned look, but then also this film stock was chosen because it makes everybody look so withered. And then the more that they exerted themselves, the more
like
that they were there.
When you see caricatures of Edgar Allan Poe's stories, that's what these characters look like. I mean, drawn in pencil in black and white, and that's what these characters look like. And I think that's the look they were going for. If you're a filmmaker, and if you're especially a cinematographer, the Law's a cinematographer, so he really knows this world. I think it's interesting to note this. The film stock was one aspect of the filming. The camera, which was the Panavision Millennium XL2 camera, is another aspect. It's more of a modern camera. The Baltar lenses. These lenses are vintage lenses that go as far back as the 1918 and as late as 1938, from what I was reading. So we're talking about lenses that literally were shot, or designed or remodeled for modern cameras. But they're lenses from the early 1900s to shoot this film on, you know? So I think it's interesting. So we're talking about the film stock, we're talking about the modern camera, and we're talking about the vintage lenses. So think about that for a second. That's fascinating to make this look come to life, you know?
I even saw like a small interview with Robert Eager where he went into Panavision and asked, what do you have that's off the menu? Like something that's just... nobody offers and all that, and they brought out these from like a drawer, these vintage lenses that get super swirly on the side. It's a very unique look to it, but it's also a very vintage look, and it's something that I know that they only used a few times while filming because the look was so heavy. This very swirled bokeh around it. But it all gave way to this idea of the dream logic that was going to start happening, and him having this kind of like, is everything we're seeing in his head, or is everything we're seeing part of reality? And then when they started using more of the lenses, it was to really put us into this.
It has, I might add, it has its drawbacks. The film was made for a mere $4 million. Which I think is interesting because I'm reading a thing here where it says the camera equipment broke down frequently due to the level of moisture on location. And all three different types of camera equipment from different eras were coupled together, right? So it's almost like 3D when you put two cameras together, or more. And nowadays, Cameron and John Landau, what they're doing is they're putting the cameras on top of each other. And that's how they're mirroring 3D. So when you're coupling these cameras, it's one of them's for backup, which is your modern, more sophisticated camera, and one of them is for the look that you're going for, right? That's what he was trying to do. But it looks like Pattinson had to go into the ocean 25 times because the camera lens kept fogging up while they were shooting the scene where he was going into the ocean. So, I mean, it has its drawbacks, and I'm not recommending it for anybody. It has its drawbacks, but if you have the budget, I mean, look, $4 million isn't unheard of for an art house picture. That's about the standard for an art house picture, $4 million bucks. So I mean, I don't know how many weeks they spent on production, but when you're at that many weeks,
it was about 38 days, if I'm correct.
38 days. Okay, so 38 days is interesting because I think these filmmakers are minimizing their casualties by having three actors: Dafoe, Pattinson, and the mermaid. Those are the three actors. That's it. And then having the biggest crew, the biggest lighting.
And the fourth one, it kind of like pops in. Which was whenever he remembered
the guy he murdered.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Or let die. He let die.
Well, he just watched him die.
Yes.
Fucked up as well.
No, but I think it's interesting. You're minimizing your casualties that way, right? Because you're exploring a filmmaking technique that isn't new by any means, but it's very, very risky. Tricky. And you know what you're going into, so you're minimizing your casualties by having a small cast, having one location. So I think that's very interesting on a $4 million budget.
With this being in the conversation for like cinematography and everything like that, and I mean the amount of energy that they put into it, I was hearing that the set, was built for this aspect ratio. They were trying to build the set to have it where it would give just enough like width to get all the walls and just enough height to show a little bit of the ceiling, where it adds to that claustrophobia. But if you look, especially for those early shots when they're tracking Patterson going through each of the rooms, they fit perfectly into the camera, and they're just tracking him the whole way through. Yeah. So everything was really built to like
to scale for
to scale where you feel like you're seeing their interactions and you're getting these two shots, but it's showing you that the rooms kind of end there, that's all they have. The only safety that they have is whatever's in that box that we're watching.
Not only that, but I think
thing when you're awesome at pre-production, like just to plan all these things in advance. It just shows how awesome it has to be.
Not only that, but I found particularly interesting the scenes where you had the lanterns, and it was just them two in the room, whether we're on the ground or they were in the table. Those intimate moments I found very interesting, particularly because it was just one lantern. That lantern was giving off to the characters, right? Giving off all of the light in this small room. Yeah. So that tells you a lot. If it's one tiny lantern that's giving you light for the entire room, that's a small ass room. Yeah. So I think it was particularly interesting to see, like, oh man, this is how much more intimate can you get with
and then something. Also with something like the lantern and the age of this film, because we're thinking that this has to be before modern inventions. I mean, they have to bring like oil up to the lamp and stuff like that. That little lantern that's kind of like lighting up their meal is that only sense of safety, especially at night. Like basically if you went anywhere else, it's supposed to be pitch black, just dark, not safe. You're near the sea, you're near ledges,
I think it's by the way, I got scared when he woke up all hungover, and I thought he was going to drink the water, man. I thought he was going to drink the dirty water. I was like, no, man, you get don't do it. I got freaked out. I think.
By the way, goddamn, that seagull's such a bitch, right? He's such a dick, man.
Just picking at him. It didn't have eyes. It didn't have eyes, right?
It was one eye.
One eye.
Some people were trying to say that, because he claims that like Dafoe killed his partner, and then the seagulls carry the souls of dead seamen. So basically the seagull was trying to warn him. It kept tapping the glass. It kept like picking at his leg. It wouldn't leave him alone because it was trying to be like,
dude, get out.
Safe.
Get out.
Exactly.
That's good. That's good. I didn't think of that.
And Defoe's a body snatcher from Get Out, and it all ties together. Yeah.
By the way, Castro, you'll like this particular fun fact. Apparently, Robert Eggers has stated that the scene where Pattinson's character, when he gets, as Robert Pattinson's character would put it, he gets jism on his face. This is the word used in the film. They said jism.
Yeah, I wouldn't have used that. Okay.
They jism. It was inspired by The Big Lebowski.
What?
Oh no, not jism. It was all the shit and piss.
Yeah, you smell.
Yeah, well, that after one of their drunken nights, what they do is that they piss and they shit into these like pots.
Yeah, the pots that they're taking.
So he grabs them, and like in this big ass storm,
that's when it gets it.
He goes.
That was based on Lebowski.
That was inspired by Lebowski.
It was an actual tribute to Big Lebowski.
Oh, okay.
And the wind blows all the shit right to him. Yes.
I love it, dude. Wow.
I love that scene so much.
So we talked about The Big Lebowski on the podcast, and I didn't know that. So that was an interesting.
That's pretty cool, dude.
That's cool.
Yeah.
There's a film that I hope we talk about at some point on this podcast, and whatever to say what you will. But one of the things that I love about Gangs of New York is the diving.
Of course, the obligatory Martin Scorsese.
The obligatory Martin Scorsese mention. No, but in Gangs of New York, they talk about world building, right? And and one of the most outstanding things about that film is the music. of that era that they they sing literally, and you get to hear the music of that time. I thought it was so cool when the characters in the Lighthouse did that. They don't have music. They don't have. Think about that. The bare necessities. They don't have a radio.
They just remember their songs.
They remember their old songs, and they're singing and they're dancing. And I thought that was so cool, just to hear. And if you hear the
talking about the songs, music, and all that stuff,
interesting. But anyways, go ahead.
That's one of the things that got me into the movie so much was like the score. Also, this mix of foghorns and stuff like this.
Is that real?
Awesome thread. What, the foghorn?
Yeah, like, is it a true or is it added? Because I've heard that some lighthouses have a horn that just.
Yeah, I don't know if this one did. They never showed it, but I don't know if this one did. But now the thing that I always found interesting, because throughout this movie, Dafoe just farts. And that's what I like about this script. This tells you how to do a fart joke, because goddamn, it's so funny every time he does. And what I do love is that there's a point where it mixes the farts with the foghorns from the sound.
Oh yeah.
And so basically every time like you hear the foghorns, you can imagine Pattinson just hearing this relentless end mirage of farts.
I was reading it's interesting we talk about the sound design, because I was reading that while Eggers was writing the script, he spent hours listening. Like while he was writing, he would put on YouTube videos of waves crashing, of farts. No, of like leaky roofs and leaky windows and like that. He threw himself into that world that way. He was just listening to those nautical sounds, quote unquote. So I think that the sound design plays a huge role. It does feel real. Yeah, the sound design plays a huge role.
And also the idea of it being kind of relentless, that like, you know, you see Patterson's frustration when the sounds come crashing in and there's no solitude, there's no silence, there's no relaxing from it. It's basically like you go to bed with the sound of the sea and everything, and it's always around you. And I think that's what plays into that idea that he's going mad because something that at first sounds unnatural is now all he can hear, you know, the foghorns and all that kind of stuff.
Beautiful. By the way, I was reading a theory that you brought up, Yokomoto, which I thought was very interesting. I just blew my mind. I was reading that we have the final shot, and you know what? If you haven't seen the film and you're
the Prometheus,
the Prometheus theory. If you haven't seen the film and you're you haven't seen you're listening to the podcast, stop here. Spoilers ahead. But obviously, when he's getting eaten out by the seagull, and that sounded sexual. I didn't mean getting eaten out by a seagull.
No, we meant it. Spoiler.
But he's getting eaten alive. He's still alive by the seagulls.
His liver.
He's eating out the seagull. Yeah,
the liver. Yeah. Which again, another good callback to one of the monologues that Dafoe was talking about. The song of like, I'd take out my liver and give it to them. If the birds in the sky were liquor, I'd take out my liver and give it to them. That was a good callback, by the way, which is cool. But no, there's a theory. If you know the Greek mythology story of Prometheus, it's basically the whole thing is the Greek gods take away the ability of use of fire from humans because they were misusing it, and the Titan Prometheus, he steals the fire back, and ultimately humans are punished because he gets punished because of what he's doing to the gods, his disobedience to the gods. And when you see all of the seabirds, it's like all of the sailormen took away their power because they're being bad sailormen. So that's why they're all around Pattinson's character. So I thought that was
the punishment of Prometheus in the mythology is that he is to be left alone with a seagull, not a seagull, an eagle eating out his liver.
Yeah,
and then it would regenerate the next day, and it would continuously be eating it out.
It's the ground.
So that's the whole
Okay.
And that's the myth that kind of like relates to the end of this. And speaking through that though, I do have another thing, because there's another like big art reference that that the movie makes.
The painting, right?
Yeah, the painting. Yes. Let me just pull it up here.
Yeah.
So in case of so I'm putting it right now on YouTube if you guys are listening to this.
Oh, it's 1904's Hypnosis.
Hypnosis. Yeah, and it's so beautiful, especially in the movie. You get to see this, basically the recreation of this painting with Dafoe naked ass, holding shining light to Robert Pattinson, and just that scene alone, I just love how beautiful it's composed.
Yeah. Thought that was definitely interesting, and I mean, it has to do with power and the light and the lighthouse, and how Dafoe is the representation of that lighthouse, and he holds the power, quote unquote, in this particular power struggle, power gain, right? So look, this film explores a ton of psychoanalysis stuff to go into mythology, alcoholism, homoeroticism. It really does go into a ton of things like that, but ultimately the storytelling for me did pretty great job of taking us into a world building in a very minimal level, without it being, the world building we know now through CG. But I thought it was a very good story that art house pictures tend to lose money, not make a lot of money. And this film, at the end of the day, grossed $10 million and did pretty good at the box office. So
more like internationally or just domestic?
Oh, just $10 million. Wow. I think.
Tuesday. $10 million.
So it didn't do much in terms of that. So I thought that was,
as long as it doubles its budget, it means that it was successful.
It was successful.
Something that we missed the last podcast, but I really wanted to ask for this one is Castro, like on an acting front. There's the question that we're gonna be implementing. I'm gonna get better at, but like, if you had to play one of the two characters, which would you play? Or the mermaid, if you want to be the one that's on the floor.
Probably just both of them. Like I wouldn't mind taking any of those roles, man.
Okay.
So I could go Patterson's subtlety, or I could go over the top with
Dafoe's.
I love his C, his and
now. As an actor, what challenges do you think you saw with the roles? Like what do you think was there?
That's the first thing. Like, I don't know where Dafoe's from. Where's Dafoe from?
Originally?
Yeah. What accent? Does he have an accent, or is he from America?
He's surprisingly South Africa. Oh.
Yeah, he's
Is he?
No, he's American Italian. He's American Italian. He's from Wisconsin.
See, I think that would be the biggest challenge. Like trying to get the
they both played interesting accents, by the way, because Pattinson's British and he played
British, somebody who's up north.
Scandinavia, Nova Scotia, Canada type of deal. And
we're going to the actor thing. Sorry. Well, Castro, what was your favorite acting piece? What is the one that you would say, like, you know what? I would take this and I would use this as my acting class monologue or stuff like that.
When he finally loses it, when
say you like my lobster boy.
Was it that part?
Love my lobster boy.
When he finally starts like revealing everything he hates about him.
Dafoe or Pattinson?
Pattinson, almost at the end.
Yeah. It's towards the end.
The flood scene.
Yeah,
it's the day they wake up afterwards. Yeah. Where he calls him a liar, and he says that, like everything that he's been telling him is like
farts. I can't stand the
when he finds the book.
Yeah.
I would pick that part, man. I think that just puts everything together into his character. Like, he just can't handle anymore. I've been trying to be nice to you because you're the boss, but I just found out that you're gonna dock all my pay. You suck. Your farts suck. Your breath, tooth, all that. I love it, dude. I wish I could do that.
And I think going back to like just the dialogue, because I think that's what's really impressive as far as the acting front. Dafoe stays in it so well. I don't know if he needed practice as far as like a dialogue coach or something like that. But
that's what I wanted to talk about in terms of the dialect. Pattinson's accent is based on a very specific area of Maine, like the farming dialect of Maine. I like that. And Willem Dafoe's is the jargon of Atlantic fishermen and sailors of the time. Sure. So I thought this was interesting. And in terms of the attention to detail, it says Robert Eggers was like very specific and very precise to the point where he was, imagine this as an actor, Custer. He was telling them, he was giving them instructions, say the second sentence of your third line 75% faster.
Wow, that's that's a challenge that I'm willing to accept.
Wait,
that's badass.
What?
So he'd basically tell them, like, say the second sentence of your third line 75% faster. That's something that Eager said on set to one of the actors.
Michael's still like, what?
Yeah, it's
what's with this math equation?
my brain can't go 75% faster. Like,
that's interesting. Talk about attention to detail.
but I mean, the pacing it works so well because you listen to the fluidity of just like Dafoe's conversation, the way he's able to throw out phrases, that
monologues and the lighting
for two actors that are trying to get away from their high profile scene, like high profile roles. Yeah. Dafoe he's known as the Green Goblin, even though he's done an amazing ton of
work on everything else, right?
And Pattinson obviously comes from the Twilight series that people he wants to get away from it. And I might add, he's going to go back into that world by playing Batman.
I know. What happened with Batman again?
Because it's a different Batman, It's a different approach to Batman. It's Batman.
That's why I started liking his career, because he got away from that and started taking like indie films and scripts that he wanted to. But now he's going back to Batman, so...
Yeah,
I do think...
Hey, man, money talks.
He's taking the Batman role because there's...
I don't know.
But also he isn't one because he has all the money he can because of Twilight. Because of the success of Twilight. So he does all... That's why he hasn't wanted to do like another project like that.
Right.
But if he's doing Batman, I do believe that there was something in the script that got him into...
Actors do that all the time, dude. No, but I think actors do that all the time. If you pay close attention to the Hollywood kind of formula with things, you'll notice that actors, and Birdman tackles this particular thing so much, but actors, I'll give you an example. I listened to a podcast the other day where Matthew McConaughey said, "Hey man, I was becoming the rom-com guy and people were making fun of me and they told me, yeah, you're the rom-com guy." And he was like, "Yeah, but those rom-coms are paying for my house on the beach that I'm running shirtless on."
Yeah.
He's like, "So I'm going to keep being that guy." But he says, "I stopped doing the rom-coms. Like, I made an active choice because I was becoming only the rom-com guy. Like, I can't perform anywhere else. I was just the rom-com guy." And he says in the story that he turned down $14.5 million of one of the films. A particular film, they kept bumping his pay grade up. And he was like, no. And he paid the price. He wasn't in a film for like 2 years. And then Dallas Buyers Club came along, and that made McConaughey we know now.
And what do you mean he paid the price?
Before that one,
studio has kind of like...
He paid the price because studios didn't want to pick him up for like 6 months. He didn't have... Just because... He didn't have his choice of rom-com films anymore. Like, nobody wanted to pick him up.
That kind of reminds me of Josh Hartnett.
Yeah.
He kind of didn't want to be in the spotlight anymore, and he lost all the connections with
I think Pattinson, with all due respect to everybody, man, like I think actors have a need to stay in the spotlight so that they can just keep getting casted at the end of the day. Yeah. So when you've done the Twilight thing and then you stepped away and did a ton of indies, and then now it's like, oh, you know what? I don't want people to forget about me on the big front. I'm going to get this Batman movie. That's my theory, by the way.
Which it makes sense. It's just
my theory is like you catapult yourself so that the next 5 years are successful in terms of getting business.
Well, you would think that with the Twilight, he already has that. Like,
what I think is that also, think about the franchise, especially after Joker, and what that puts you in, like that position as an actor. Like, because Joaquin Phoenix just got like a Best Actor award. Coming off of, like,
that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, and I think that shows right now, at least on a social front and on a producer front, that somebody who goes into one of those films, you don't have to disregard them anymore.
That's why it pisses me off, dude. It pisses me off when people talk about actors that way. And I use the MCU as an example because Robert Downey Jr. is one of the best actors, period. Yeah. I mean, if you don't know his other work, but beyond, even as Tony Stark, he really dove into that role.
I can't see anybody else.
Chadwick Boseman, the late great Chadwick Boseman, Don Cheadle. I mean, you have a plethora of amazing actors.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
they're chosen in these roles for a reason. Chris Pratt was Arrested Development Chris Pratt, and then he became Chris Pratt by playing Star-Lord. So I think you're right. It's utter bullshit, and I think guys like Matthew Vaughn, when he did Kick-Ass, and when you saw films like The Watchmen, it opened the doors up for these superhero movies. And that's a discussion for another day. But actors, you're right, Delau, actors have the opportunity to play these great, juicy, great roles. That's how the whole thing started. You think about Blade, and you think about Wesley Snipes, and you think about Del Toro's Blade 2. It was an amazing film with amazing performance and a juicy character, and who wouldn't want to play a role like that?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to
think. I think if like I was Patterson going into that, I could go and jump into this script because I think for one, it's going to show an acting ability, and this seems like it's taking a different take on like Bruce Wayne and all that. Yeah. And then also, it opens you up to the other type of avenues that are out there. Like, if you want to keep doing that whole like MCU example, if you want to keep doing this franchise, this series, and let that kind of be the next thing you're known for, then it seems to work out.
It's also a play for directors, by the way. That's what happened with Todd Phillips. Todd Phillips was known as the comedy guy. And then he did the Joker. Well, he did War Dogs, and then he did the Joker, and then he became like, oh, man, this is a guy to respect for other films, not just comedies. Yeah. To the point where De Niro and Scorsese got involved in the Joker early on in its development because they saw this as a gritty New York story of a comedian gone wrong, so to speak, right? Yeah. So, and that's what King of Comedy really was, by the way. So I think it's interesting for directors. Directors are starting to play into that role. Jon Favreau is one of my favorite directors of all time. I love him. I love his work. I love his indie work, specifically like Swingers and Chef is one of my all-time favorite films. But he single-handedly created the MCU with Iron Man. That was all him.
Yeah, the first one was the best. Yeah.
So Jon Favreau like gets thrown into like, oh, he's doing big Disney pictures now because he did the Jungle Book and he did the new Lion King. But I think directors are getting thrown into like, oh, he's a superhero guy. But through things like the Joker, like Delau says, now can get a little more respect. So I think that's really cool. Really cool.
That's true. I just think it's a little bit tricky for him since he kind of wanted to get out, but now he's kind of jumping back in. But I get it. It must have been a good script for him.
But think about this though. He did The Lighthouse right before. The Lighthouse isn't an old picture. It's 2019. So he did that right before jumping into the Batman. That's smart, man. I think Pattinson's got his head on the shoulders. I think
there was also another film that he did with A24 when I was looking at some of like the films coming before The Lighthouse.
Good Times, right?
No, it's the one. I don't think it's Good Times. It's one where he went into space. Yeah.
The Safdie brothers one, or
no? It was also from A24. It was Patterson. It was going into space and basically
High Life.
High Life, yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, I didn't see that one either.
But when you look into it, that one also looks like a more serious role. It's that kind of. It's like going mad, but in space because basically humans are weeded out, and there's these group of people that are kind of sent out there, and it's like if they can make humanity work somewhere else, that's great, and if they can't, well, then they're just on a ship to die, and they have to kind of settle with that. So you saw Patterson kind of breaking into those roles, and
by the way, I haven't seen Tenet. I haven't seen The Devil All the Time. Yeah. Those are two new films that Pattinson's a part of, and a very big role with. I know he did it with Tom Holland, Devil All the Time, and I heard it was a great performance on both films. I haven't seen Tenet either, but
the one I saw before, like after Twilight, is Remember Me. But I don't know.
Yeah, and he wasn't that bad in that.
Dude, that's the first time.
And also Water for Elephants.
Water for Elephants. I was going to say my wife she introduced that film to me. My thought process was, it's the Twilight guy. I don't want to watch it. And we watched it, and I was like, oh damn, he's pretty damn talented. He was pretty good. Yeah, Water for Elephants was a good film.
He also did the David Cronenberg Cosmopolis.
Okay. You know what, man? Cronenberg, he disappointed me with the last film I saw of his. I saw Maps to the Stars, which Pattinson also has a role in. It was so disappointing to me, man. Cronenberg's on my bad list right now. He's on my bad list.
You know which one disappoint you?
Which one? The Cable Guy. I prefer what you have right under your cable.
Tower Crown.
Yeah, I prefer what you have right under.
Oh, well, of course, man. Out of time. The first one, second one, third one.
Third one's my favorite, by the way. Anyways, I think it's time. It's about that time, Yokomoto.
Ooh. What time is it, Yokomoto?
Oh, well, it's about that time. Oh, well, welcome to the Tower Crown. In case of you don't know, the Tower Crown is a debate show where the debaters don't always know exactly what they're going to be debating for. Now, so for this last one, since we talked about the Lighthouse and people going mad, we put up a poll about movies that are about going insane. So on Facebook, we put up a poll with these 4 movies. Let me put them out. And this is, so one was The Babadook.
Babadook.
Then it was Black Swan.
Black Swain.
The Shining.
Give me the bet.
Shining.
Give me the bet.
And The Joker.
More like
The
Joker.
2019 one.
I like the Joker.
And so y'all voted, and the 2 that came up were Black Swan against The Shining.
The Black Shining.
The Black Shining. I gotta tell you guys, man. I think for this particular, and it's gonna sound weird, for this particular going insane topic, I'm gonna have to side with Black Swan.
And I'm gonna have to side with The Shining because you'd be a fool to choose anything else.
Shining is the definition.
I know.
Okay, Castro, I think it's time. You're gonna have to moderate.
All right.
You're gonna have to listen to us, and I'm
Okay.
I think you're ready.
Custer will be the moderator.
Okay.
I'll help you out, Carlos, whenever you want.
All right, I'm siding with Black Swan on this particular one because here's the thing.
Who's going first? Black Swan?
Whoever you want. Yeah.
Take it away.
I think The Shining.
Okay.
The Shining.
Wait, real quick.
Yes.
I think if I'm not mistaken, the definition is who went more insane. I think that's what we're going to measure this scale on, right?
Right.
Or what are we?
Well, that's
Castro,
not fair. Nobody in Black Swan killed anybody.
Whatever the moderator needs feels like that his vote was.
Okay.
Whatever you need, Castro, you tell us. Okay?
Castro, what's the point system?
Also,
best film, more insane.
No, but it says best going insane scene.
Best going insane scene.
Oh shit! No. Okay.
Oh my god. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Best
I
going
got
insane movie.
Okay, best going insane movie.
Okay, God, making me on the quick.
Okay, I think it's interesting. You can moderate it however you want, Costa. We'll leave that up to you. But
I'm already biased but all right.
Yeah, you are already biased. Everybody should be biased. I mean, look, it's Kubrick in his prime. It's The Shining is
Aronofsky at his prime.
It is Aronofsky at his prime.
Definition of psychology.
Look, you know what the thing is? I'm not a big Aronofsky fan. There's very little films where I like this. Again, it's not my cup of tea.
Oh, I love him.
I know you do. I know it's your cup of tea. But I mean, you're talking about like Requiem for a Dream and Noah and Mother. Obviously, Castro, you saw Mother.
The Wrestler.
The Wrestler for me was a good Aronofsky film. But anyways,
okay.
I'm trying to make a case for Black Swan. I think that this.
All right, so let's step into Black Swan then.
Aronofsky has the ability. If you saw Requiem for a Dream, by the way, Aronofsky has this ability to throw you into this. You're going insane with the character, and The Shining doesn't do that for me. I'm not going insane with Jack Nicholson's character. I'm not going insane with him. I'm witnessing him going insane. And with Black Swan, I'm thrown into it. I'm in there. I'm thrown into Natalie Portman's desperation. And by the way, Mila Kunis's performance was actually pretty damn great in this film. It's a stone's throw. People would argue that it's a stone's throw from the 70s show. I don't think so. I think it's much more distance than that. She did fantastic as the quote unquote the villain, the one that brings his character down. Mila Kunis's portrayal here was fantastic. I think Aronofsky's directing style is very clear in this picture. I think the contrast between beauty and psychological mayhem is the mise en scène for that is just perfect, man, because you're talking about a beautiful ballet individual, but then you're seeing this character go insane. The club scene in particular is the scene I'd want to kind of put as my proof. The club scene in Black Swan where Mila Kunis takes her to the club and you witness her going insane in that scene. You witness her going on the uneasiness of Natalie Portman's character for that film. So yeah, that's kind of my opening argument. I think that this film takes you into almost like a POV where The Shining, it's fantastic, but it doesn't take me in.
Okay, I'm ready to throw myself in the ring.
Yeah.
So
All right.
I know that you might say that in your case, it brought you into the character and it brought you into like, you're going insane with the kind of film and the narrative and all that.
Yeah.
I think The Shining was trying to be, it's a horror film, and it was trying to do what every great horror film does, which is scare you. And the way it does that is that it doesn't bring you into Jack Nicholson's character, but it brings you into the Overlook Hotel. And even with the modern innovation of the Steadicam and having to track very organically the characters moving through this very real space, you're kind of put into their position. You're able to see Danny and his wife, they're kind of trapped with him, and it's like they have this care for him being like the family member, but then you're seeing how at the end of the day, even though it's a big hotel, they can't escape him. And then it's also making it scarier by showing you just how real this all is for him, that this is talking to him talking to the bartender, him going into the bathroom, him experiencing this, where then you're getting this sense of hopelessness for whoever else is going to be inside the hotel. Because
I read The Shining more fantasy for me.
Oh, so you like the new one?
I haven't seen Doctor Sleep.
Pretty great.
I haven't seen Doctor Sleep. Yeah, I heard it was pretty great too. Like for The Shining fans, I heard it was pretty great. I haven't seen it.
It was a pleasant sequel.
But I think that I heard Obi-Wan did pretty good. I find The Shining more of a, and I love that about The Shining. I love that it's a storybook. no pun on storybook, but I like that it's a storybook, and I like that it's a story. But that's what it does for me. It takes me into like, oh man, is this really happening? Or it takes me into the fantasy side. And the argument here is, who did you witness going crazy? Like, who did we feel going crazier? So to me, the fantasy side is like, wow, that's pretty awesome to witness and to be thrown into that world and witness this character. But if you know anything about Matthew Libatek, you're talking about camera movement. Matthew Libatek was a cinematographer for Black Swan, and he's pretty much Aronofsky's go-to cinematographer. If you know anything about his camera movement, he specializes in throwing you into a world. One of the most impactful cinematography instances for him, for me, was A Star Is Born. The camera work in A Star Is Born is fucking amazing, dude. And Libatek you give all the credit to him. I mean, he worked with F. Gary Gray on Straight Outta Compton. He did a bunch of stuff, but Libatek's work alone, like, you really do see Libatek's camera work throw you into this world. I mean, make you a part of this world. I don't know that The Shining did that.
But even when we talk about Kubrick, and we've talked about it before with 2001: Space Odyssey, and we're talking about it with The Shining, it's defining that ability in cinema. It's that innovation of using the camera in that way.
Kubrick did that for me in Full Metal Jacket. He didn't do that for me in The Shining. He did that for me in Full Metal Jacket. I was thrown into that world more. I was a private in that army. I got to witness, but
you're measuring the success by how much this is making you a part of that, and I'm measuring it by how effectively it was able to show you the bleakness of the scenario of Danny and his mother, and how they're just trapped within this world that
I hate to use this argument, but his mother is, and Stephen King has said this many times. I hate to use this argument, but she's just used as a scream queen, and we don't really get to see what she's used as the scream queen for this horror picture. We're not going through the journey with her. We're not going through the journey with her. She's
the denial. My bad. I'm away. I'm out. Her husband is going crazy.
Let me put it to you this way. When it comes to the psychological aspect of it, Natalie Portman's character as a female character has depth and layers, and has.
Well, that's because she's the main character.
Has a journey, yeah, but not just her. Even Mila Kunis's character, who's a supporting character, and the villain, has depth and layers, and they're strong women and strong characters. And in The Shining, she's not a strong woman by any means. by any argument. And
it's such a well-paced film, though. I mean, it's something that you can already see there being this initial tension with Jack's character that even before coming here, there's something that's not fully resolved about him, making him vulnerable to everything that's going to happen, subsequently later, or just sequentially later. But then it builds on that. Even the little details of Kubrick wanting to use red as a primary color, that the more it's introduced, the more Jack's being covered and enveloped by this kind of madness.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate and argue that because of what we know of Jack Nicholson and his acting abilities and the roles he's played
behind the scenes for that,
you kind of go into this movie thinking he's crazy to begin with. Yeah. So you don't see a progression of craziness, and that's not Kubrick's fault. That's casting Jack Nicholson's fault.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's one of the reasons why Stephen King hated the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Yeah, Stephen King hated The Shining. Yeah, he hated The Shining.
He's gone on record to say that, dude.
He hated The Shining for those two primary reasons, because the dynamic of Jack's character wasn't a progression, and number two, he hated that the wife, the mother, that she was a scream queen, that she didn't have in the book. She has more of a purpose. In the book, she has more of a stronger prerogative, like a stronger essence. But in the movie, she's just a scream queen, and Stephen King hated that. He hated the movie for that. And I love that in Ready Player One, it's the work that the creator hated.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. But I just think that casting Jack Nicholson, I went into the movie.
But
thinking,
you can see, and it goes back to that whole idea of like red being the color to represent madness. You can see how the environment kind of trickles in and starts to permeate him throughout the entire
I have to argue that, because we just saw a black and white film where it didn't need to show me any red to show me madness.
But we had a film that used it used a film stock that doesn't recognize red to show red being a darker element within the characters. that used red. It just used it used red as for negative space,
Okay, Yokomoto, help me out, man. What am I missing?
I'm sorry, but no.
You're a dick. Okay.
You're not.
The best thing of talking about progression. Perfection is one of the search for perfection is one of the things that can actually show you the progression of a character.
Yeah,
it's because of her. You see this innocence, the innocence of Natalie Portman in this, and she just wants to be the one true dancer. And then, although she gets the audition, she nails the part. She's still told, you know what, you're still not quite there.
You're not good enough.
So the fact that she is she's like, you know what, no. You're not going to tell me that. I got to do it. But she's still saying no. And
I think it's something that as artists we can all relate to, because you're always wanting to be recognized for your work.
But I think going back to The Shining, another aspect that plays into the film that makes it a horror and makes it a good horror is showing the repercussions that madness or letting something kind of go too far has on everybody else. It's Jack Nicholson's madness and his descent into that starts to create this unease within the hotel, within the family, and it's the fact that it's unchecked, and every time that the wife tries to check on him or tries to intervene, and she's powerless, or she decides to back away to prevent an argument, and lets that kind of madness grow, it gets to the point where then he just becomes this murderer who needs to go and correct the family. And I think showing not only the descent into madness, but the effect it has on everybody else and the fear that builds up from not being able to control it once it is there. I think that's what makes The Shining just an effective film at the very end,
Yeah, okay. but we're talking about, using those elements, I'm sorry, Yokomoto, those elements as an effective way to tell a horror film. Tell a horror story.
I'm saying that madness and the descent into horror. No, the descent into madness for a character, I think, can do more than just watching a film and it being like, oh, the person went crazy and the person died and that's it.
Yeah, but
there's more layers that can come out of that, which The Shining did. It played with the idea of It played with the idea of madness coming out through the person, the way it kind of affects the rest of the family, the way it affects an environment. It played with these themes as opposed to it just being an isolated incident with a character.
But much like one of your favorite films, or one of your favorite films of all time, much like Birdman, the interpretation of him jumping out the window is the exact, almost like mirror of Black Swan and her jumping at the end. You know, it's this descent into madness where this is the only way I'm going to get my glory. And this is the only way I'm going to get my sanity, is by not existing and by making my mark on this stage that no one can ever take away. That's madness.
The drum sequence from Whiplash, the ending sequence of Whiplash also resembles this, total giving into this insanity that the world has created for you.
Yeah,
that wants from you, and you just want to give everything to them, but
but it's still not good enough.
You're talking about, I think, a key element of like these films that have a character who descends into madness, like the Joker, like everybody else. That pinnacle moment when they just kind of give in to whatever that feeling is, and give in to this raw feeling that at all costs, whatever the objective is at that time needs to be done. And this film has that. It has the climax of Jack going in, having to murder family, having to correct them, and he's given in. He's done what every other film that has a person who descends into madness does. This is just something that it's not only dealing with him diving into madness and what this is going to do for his character as a father figure, as a writer, as somebody more than just like Jack the murderer. It's showing how it affects everybody else. It's showing that his madness is this unstoppable evil force that if it wasn't for Danny knowing the layouts of the maze and knowing how to like play into his weaknesses, because he was always cooped up inside the hotel, that madness wouldn't have been stopped. He would have killed them, and then he would have stayed in that environment.
I think another argument in terms of the fields, I mean, Jack's a writer, right? Ultimately, he has to kind of go into his mind about stuff like this. And Natalie Portman's character even her profession takes a physical toll that could just descend you more into madness, because you know how much weight you have to lose to become a ballerina, and how many people
an obsession.
Yeah, it's an obsession, and it becomes unhealthy. You know, they become bulimic or anorexic, just to maintain their status, just to maintain their stature. Even the physical toll plays a huge role in Natalie Portman, because in preparation she had to lose, I think, 20 pounds more just to look like a ballerina. And Natalie Portman's pretty skinny.
I was gonna say that.
I mean, her training just to go into this film and give this performance is insane. Like, she had to, thankfully, not go Heath Ledger insane, but and I mean that in the respectful way. But thankfully, I think this is one of those roles that could throw you in there. And I do think Jack Nicholson is just fucking crazy by nature, and that doesn't affect him. You know, once they yell cut, he's back to Jack. And I think Natalie Portman probably struggled a little bit with this character just because of how insane she had to go into that mentality to portray it. So I think that's something.
Completely become a different person.
There's also something about the script work of The Shining and the way the dialogue's constructed that, you know, even with the pacing, even if you were to have other people play the same role and say the same dialogue, you can see those kind of pinnacle moments that, I mean, Jack Nicholson is just a master at madness and anger and playing the different shades of that. But it also shows how the script was made in a way to show these breaking points within the characters, these breaking points within people feeling that kind of like loss of control.
Here's my argument with that. I think you're right. I think The Shining does do that. But think about Uncut Gems for a minute. It's 2.5 hours of going crazy. That probably should have been in the Tower Crown too, by the way. Of going crazy by witnessing everything that's going on, right? And it makes you feel that anxiety for these 2.5 hours with no breaks. And I think Black Swan does a better job at that than The Shining. With The Shining, there's breaks and kind of moments of like, all right, this just happened, cut here, let's go on to the next thing. This just happened, cut here, let's go on to the next thing. And Black Swan is just a mind fuck, really. And you feel that way as an audience member. You feel like, oh man, what's gonna happen to her? Like, what the hell is she gonna punch this girl? Is she gonna kill her? Is she gonna plan the murder? Like, you start to feel that anxiety yourself. Without pause, without breaks, without, moments like that. So I think talk about going insane. That's how insanity, I think, probably feels, is there's no stopping this. I'm going crazy. But when you have moments of reflection, then that makes you calm down a little bit.
But isn't there something that's almost more realistic in The Shining with somebody who's basically going mad as a family member, and this complacency that everybody's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, it's dad. Like dad's not going to hurt us. My husband says he's quit drinking. He's better now. And seeing that kind of grows to a point where then it is unstoppable.
I'd argue that that's less real. I'd argue that that's less real.
No, I think it's more real, and it shows the fear behind it, because it's something that with complacency, it can continue to grow, and then after that, it's this unstoppable force. And it's not feeling like, oh man, this person looks like they're really losing it. Oh man, this person, I should stop them. It's something that's subtle. It's anger that builds up. It just reaches a point where then Jack breaks. Yeah. And there's nothing that can be done about it. You can't talk to him or anything. It just goes from thinking that everything's fine to then the next day he has an axe at me and he has to kill me, and there's nothing I can do to change his prerogative.
Yeah, but to me that sounds about as logical as it may be supernatural, who knows, right? But it sounds about as logical as like Abraham killing Isaac, from the Bible. Yeah, God told me to do it, and I'm gonna kill my son, but then God stopped me. That's supernatural. I want to say
Black Swan's. Black Swan's more theatrical about it. You're feeling this insanity.
I'd argue
you feel like that's how it is, but
The Shining is more theatrical. It's more dramatic. It's more open, and Black Swan is more intimate. I'd argue the Black Swan is much more intimate than The Shining. The Shining is much more of a bigger picture.
It shows you so much more. It doesn't just go into that one little thing that that seeking perfection drives you insane. It goes into, first off, the passion of writing. It goes into the environment around you. It goes into the struggle of family. It goes into.
I'd argue that OCD is a very real thing. And OCD is all about seeking perfection, right? OCD is all about seeking perfection and seeking a routine of ways that can't be broken and can't be disrupted. And I think that the OCD kind of approach is more realistic. So to seek perfection is much more nerve-wracking than, there was a light switch that was turned on because of this hotel, and now I'm going crazy.
Oh, but he has to provide for his family. That's why he took a job that's. He took a job that he didn't know was going to drive him crazy. This wasn't an active choice.
There's indications that he was trying to leave something. He was trying to leave this cozy family life because he wanted to just dive into his work, and he was at his most vulnerable state when the hotel took control of him.
With all due respect, I mean, just talking about a writer, right? As a writer, I have a friend that did the same thing. He went away he rented a beach house basically for 2 weeks and decided to finish his script because otherwise he wasn't going to be able to do it. And I'd argue that most writers do that, take that approach. Like most writers take the approach of like, I got to lock myself in a hotel room until I'm done. And I don't know if that's enough of a reason for me to like, he's going crazy, but that's my closing argument.
I just think that The Shining didn't just play with the idea of him going mad. It played with the elements of how that affects others. It played in with the idea of it could happen because of your passions. It could happen because of the environment. It could happen because of the responsibilities. That it's not just an isolated thing. I think it allowed, if you wanted to, you could view it from all these different lenses I told you, and you could find plenty of justification throughout the film on why that works, And that's my closing argument. That's my closing argument.
All right.
Okay, I'm just gonna do my last one, and then
no, you can't.
Castro,
what the hell?
You can do.
I don't know you, man. So Yokomoto, this is up to you, man. Because I would give it to both of them right now.
So I will give it.
But
do I get one more chance?
No, wait. To tell you which is the better one. No, the biggest point here to tell you which is the better one is the last line from the movie. Black Swan lets you know this was perfect.
Yes, they reached it. Yes, thank you, Yokomoto.
Okay, Castro, throw a question so that way it can help you out. Because
at the end of the day, that's the end of it. Is it who went crazy, or
have we ever had a draw for
that's what I'm leaning towards.
I almost had a draw last time.
Okay.
Look, I think the only thing that Shining takes it is because it's not exclusive just to her. It's exclusive to his whole family,
But his family's not going crazy.
No, but they're seeing that he's going crazy, and he's.
But we're talking about who's going crazy.
That's why
if you're talking about who's going like crazy, I think it feels okay. I'll say it feels kind of like a draw, but I mean there's something about Jack's character going insane to the point that really there's nothing that can stop him. That he goes from being a father to a monster.
Okay, here's my argument. Here's my closing argument. I promise you, I'm done after this. I think
you guys are just ganging up on me. That's what that.
I think the status in cinema and cinema appreciation, cinema history of The Shining clouds everybody's judgment.
What?
I think
No.
I do.
You guys
I
your
do.
facts.
No. I think it clouds everybody's judgment because it's a legendary film. Just like when I was arguing against 2001. Yeah, I just like when we were arguing against 2001. I think that the status maybe clouds the fact that because it is a better movie. I'm not arguing that it's not a better movie. It is a better movie.
I think
that Carlos.
It is a better film.
It's fundamental. It's something that if you wanted to, you could take one of those pieces, like the environment making you insane or your passion and all that, and then more films are able to play off of that later on.
I just
they could dive into any one of those elements, and it could work for the film.
I just always judge that effect allow as an audience member how I'm feeling, how this film makes me feel. So if I can relate to the character and they make me feel exactly how the character's feeling, you've done your job for me. And I think there's different instances in film where they do that. In this particular film, I think we're arguing if I were in the shoes of each character, I'd go crazier in Portman's position.
Between perfection and isolation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which one would drive you more mad?
I just feel that if you look at The Shining, you could say, wow, that film made me feel uneasy, or it scared me, especially like the interpretations of audiences who first watch it. And then if you tackle any reason for why it made you feel that way, that you could find justifications for those different areas. The justification of isolation, family, his passion, and all that kind of stuff driving him insane. In the second one, they basically spell out why what happened, but without that one, if you watch just the first one and there's no other context around you, it also adds in that kind of fear of the unknown, and it makes it really effective at every time you try to.
The sequel destroyed The Shining.
It didn't destroy The Shining. It tried to give a name to
the whole going insane thing.
No, but when you're talking about a horror film, I think even Eric Sanchez and Eric liked Dr. Sleep as a horror fan. He'd argue that he wanted Jack to just go insane because Jack's going insane. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just what the hotel is causing. Yeah. And the sequel, from what I understand, justifies all these actions and justifies...
It doesn't justify the actions. It just shows the power that once you're insane, you're trapped. Like.
By the way, another Stephen King hit, by the way. Dr. Sleep, the book, was a big hit when it came out.
And actually, Stephen King actually really liked it.
And he really
liked
the film.
The movie. Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry, Castro. You gotta choose.
Okay. Buddy. Mine has naked ladies. Just saying that.
Naked ladies.
Black Swan has a lesbian scene.
No.
Yeah, we have a lesbian scene with two of the hottest actresses in Hollywood.
Huh?
That's true, man.
And going down.
Mine has one of the scariest naked women in Hollywood history.
I love Russian women, dude.
Okay.
I love Russian women. Exactly. Mila Kunis, Russian.
Austin, our God.
Say anything to me, dude.
By any chance, were you kind of like attuned of what the debate was going? Do you have an opinion? Because it appears that our moderators kind of like split between.
Yeah, man. I came in with Shining.
Most of us are, I think. Most of us are.
And it just... What's up?
Okay, do you have...
Okay, just let me know. Send me a message or anything. And meanwhile, I'll put in the winner. Any closing arguments or anything like that?
I think I've made my point.
I think Carlos Harris sucks.
I got the vote in.
Do I win?
And here it is. You ready, guys?
Oh, you know what? Hold on.
I already know.
Black Swan. Yes.
Not even that.
Yes.
Castro, what were you going to go with?
I put a draw, man. You guys have a good point.
Yeah, that's why I asked Austin.
I couldn't pick The Shining because I like The Shining. But you had some good points for The Swan, and I would have to see The Swan again. That's why I'm like...
I think, like, I feel that The Swan deserves the win The Swan, yeah, not even Black Swan. The crappy remake.
Yeah.
With Betty White. Yeah, no, like I feel like it works because when you look at a lot of Kubrick's films, it's not. A lot of people say like, oh, it's the best thing of all time, but I feel like it did a really good job as being a fundamental film, like something that if you were to take inspiration from, you could find elements that work really well, and then take that and for The Shining. If you look at The Shining, you can find elements that work really well, and then as time progressed, technology progressed, it just got better, you know.
True.
Like with the remasters, you mean, or
no, not with the remasters. I mean, like if you look at things like
oh yeah, okay. Look, The Shining is gonna age well. The Shining will always age well. Black Swan's not gonna age well.
What do you mean? Black Swan's gonna age perfectly.
No, I was gonna say
because in the end, because the story is still there. It's.
I mean, it's one of Aronofsky's best. It's one of Aronofsky's best. In fact, I think it nominated.
I do think it's his best. Well, it got Best Picture nomination.
Yeah.
Got the Best Actress.
I mean, you know, like I'm particular because I like looking into like Steadicam work and the development of that kind of artistic tool, you could say, especially in filmmaking. And I just felt that when you look at what it did for The Shining and the way they were able to use that tool, and then the way they're able to use that tool now, especially with films like Birdman and I mean Black Swan and all that, you can see that the development just got so much. It's done so much for cinema that.
I mean, but that's Kubrick's almost like tagline, right? Like I'm gonna break the form, I'm gonna improve the art form, and that's just Kubrick,
and you know, it's Kubrick. Just that's it. You know, it's.
With that note, I think it's very deserving. But
we're gonna have to call it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to call it. I think we're approaching 2 hours here, which was a beautiful discussion, guys.
Yeah. You know what? I think it's insane
that we're ending right now.
Thinks that we're actually gonna talk about the cable guy.
Wow,
that is pretty insane.
Why'd you gotta?
No. I think you guys need to remember we did do that episode. I just didn't record it.
Oh yeah.
Last month to do it. There's no excuses.
Guys, I think this discussion on the Lighthouse and
check it out.
The Lighthouse was fantastic, and talking about these two great films, Aronofsky's Black Swan and Kubrick's The Shining, which respectively will probably have their own episodes on this podcast at some point. The Lighthouse was a great picture. It's one of those films that shows me art house is still respectable and still alive in cinema today, and A24 is doing amazing things and bringing these films to light. So great performances, great overall conversation. I want to thank everybody for being here today. Do you guys have any final thoughts on anything?
Don't kill seagulls and don't go outside. COVID's still very real.
Yes.
That juju is so real, guys. So
yeah, on that note, guys, please stay safe, wear a mask, stay indoors, and keep listening in. And we're trying to do as much content on the WatchTower podcast. So if you guys want to suggest a film to us, you guys want to come on and discuss a film that maybe we're not seeing or we're not paying attention to, please send us a message. Comment down here if you're on Facebook or YouTube, or send us a message about the Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Please keep sharing the podcast with your fellow cinema lovers. We thank you all for tuning in to the WatchTower podcast, and we'll see you next time.